To everybody to come on into the room right here, right now. Y'all come on in. I know some folk were just waiting because I was getting text messages and folk were calling me today saying, Pastor, are we on for the night? We doing perspectives and conversations? And I said, yes, we are. So I know some of y'all have been waiting for us to go live tonight. I'm excited. I'm excited about tonight and what's getting ready to come, what's getting ready to go down, what's getting ready to come of this conversation, and we're getting ready to engage in on tonight. I tell you, the panel is hot, and it's. I mean, when I tell you the panel is hot, and we're gonna get this party started in a minute. So I want y'all to come on, listen. Let's take time. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna do it right along with y'all. Let's take time. And I want to extend an invitation to you to go to your Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, you're watching via Facebook, I want to invite you to take some time to share this. Now, if you don't have a Facebook page or if you're watching via YouTube, you can you can share it to your page. However, it's going to only share a link to your page. But if you have a page and you're on Facebook with us, I invite you right now. Touch your neighbor and say right now. Right now. Okay. Tell your neighbor you need to share this on your page. As a matter of fact, you need to invite them to start a watch party. So this is what we're going to do. Just go to Journey of Faith UMC. And as you get on Journey of Faith UMC, if you would just click, I'm giving you the instructions and everything. Why? Because I think that there's somebody that's connected to you on your page that needs to hear the message that's getting ready to go forth out of tonight. And you don't want them to miss this. Don't hoard the food tonight. Don't hoard the food. There's plenty on the table for everybody. There is a smorgasbord of food, of knowledge, of information that's getting ready to come across this screen right now. And I don't want you to cause your people to miss out on what's getting ready to be shared because the chef has laid it out for tonight. So I want to help you. I want to help you, help me, help you. Share this on your page. Come on, y'all. Let's start a watch party together. All right. So I'm sharing it now. I'm getting ready to share it. Okay. So won't y'all help me? Let's share this thing tonight.
I guess I need a social media.
Y'all, I've been trying to talk Pastor D into going ahead and starting her social media page, and she is fighting it tooth and nail, just like I did before I started it. Well, guess what?
I'm good.
It's a necessary in today's time. Come on, y'all, tell her about it. You don't believe me? What? All right. So look,
one day I will.
Take some time to share this to your page. Right now, if you would do me that favor. I believe that the Lord wants to bless somebody in tonight's conversation. And I am so thankful for the vessels. I'm going to tell y'all a little bit more about it because I know y'all see these beautiful faces on the screen tonight. And I believe that God's going to use them mightily to speak truth to power in this day and in this time. To a world that needs to hear this. And so I want to ask you if you would just come on, take some time and let's share it on our pages and let's start a watch party. I'm just giving y'all a little bit of time to do so. I know Pastor sound like I'm just rambling off, but I promise I'm not. I'm trying to give y'all some time to invite some folk to come on in. All right. So won't y'all do me that favor? Come on in. Come on in. All right. There we go. All righty. Here we go. Oh, I already did. Oh, you good. All right. Y'all shared it? Did everybody share it? You shared it on your page?
We're ready.
All right, listen, towards the end of tonight, after we have kind of gone through, we're going to allow opportunity for some of you all to ask questions. So if you have a question, if you got to write that question down, write that question down. We want you to put it in the chat box because we're going to give time for Q&A, and I want these ladies, these magnificent women, to be able to offer response to your questions on tonight. So I want to make sure that you take some time, think about what's being said. If you have a question, make sure to put that question in the chat box when we open up for Q&A on tonight. All right. Well, let's open up with a word of prayer. Y'all want me to sing a song? I ain't sing a song. Let's open up with a word of prayer. Bow your heads right where you are. God, we thank you for your grace. Man, we thank you for your love and your kindness. We thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to share with the world, Father, to share with the community what you have given us, what you have imparted in our hearts, and what you're birthing, even in the challenging times that we are experiencing in this day and in this time right now. I ask, Father, Lord, that you would let this be a platform that is informative, a platform that is groundbreaking, a platform that is eye-opening for everyone that will come across this meeting on tonight. Father, speak forth, break forth right now. We give you permission, Father, to come in and to speak truth. Speak your truth, Father, that folk would hear you. You said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. And I believe that you're going to be lifted up in the voices of these prophetic voices that have gathered here on tonight. We ask that you would do this right now. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I know we're not in church, but it's just hard as the pastor, preacher, to not be churchy at some point. So anyhow, we are, y'all listen. Ms. Denise is with us tonight, and I'm going to introduce her shortly here. The rest of them know that I am a nut. I'm a nut for Jesus, y'all. I really, and my wife does too. So they know I'm a nut for Jesus. But anyhow, we welcome you once and again to Perspectives and Conversations. This marks our third week that we have been having conversations. Last week, we had the African American male perspective. And when I tell you, those brothers jumped in and we had a phenomenal conversation on last week. And then the previous week, we heard the pastor's perspective, and a couple of pastor friends of mine, we jumped in and had some wonderful, wonderful conversation. But tonight, oh my goodness, tonight, we're going to hear the African American woman perspective. And I want you to know I'm your host tonight. I get the opportunity to present to you these phenomenal women of God on tonight. And so I'm going to start, and not only am I your host, I'm your moderator for tonight as well. So I'm serving a double duty here, but we're going to make it through. All right. So first off, I want to take time and I want to introduce to you none other than Miss Melkia McDuffie, who is an accomplished human resources executive, leading Fortune 500 organizations to transform how they hire, develop, engage, and retain top talent. Why don't you welcome tonight Miss Melkia McDuffie to the panel. You know, we're going to get some of them sound effects. So listen, you all know for the last couple of weeks, Melkia has actually been the moderator. So we switched roles tonight. I'm moderating and she's sitting on the panel tonight. So we're glad to have her on the panel on tonight. Then we have a native of Houston who has held a number of professional hats. As an 18-year veteran educator, she's a proud graduate of Prairie View A&M University. I know the Panthers are out there right now. And she holds a master's in educational administration from Sam Houston University with a Texas principal certification. I want you to welcome to the panel tonight, Miss Elena Adams. Come on, let's get Miss Elena Adams.
Oh, I like that, Elena. I like that.
Humble, I tell you. Then we have on the panel, none other, this woman is an award-winning real estate broker and CEO of the LeQuinn Group, a full-service real estate firm located here in Houston, Texas. For the past 16 years, LeQuinn has specialized in client representation and asset management. She is the former president of the Women's Council of the Houston Black Real Estate Association and currently serves on the Board of Governors. Please welcome to the panel, Miss Matasha LaQuinn. And then our sister from another mother, we go back, got history. She is the godmother to my son, and she is a 25 plus year veteran in the media industry. She is a high school film instructor in the city of Atlanta. She is the creator and executive producer of the talk show The Circuit with Valerie. Additionally, she is a well sought after clinician and consultant for all aspects of mass media. Would you please welcome to the panel, Miss Minister Valerie Somerville. And then we have none other than this young lady is a consultant who guides companies in building and implementing effective strategies to increase the diversity of their workforce and engage leaders and employees in creating an inclusive culture. As the founder and president of Inclusive Impact Consulting, LLC, Janice brings over 30 years of experience in human resources, with 20 years of that experience in diversity and inclusion. She most recently served as the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at the Exelon Corporation, a Fortune 100 energy company headquartered in my spot, Chicago, Illinois. Why don't you welcome to the panel, Miss Janice Murray. Hey, glory to God. Listen, so let's get ready. We get ready. It's getting ready to go down. But just before we start in on this, there's a video that we would like to share with you. And so this video will serve as a launch pad for our discussion for tonight. So if you would, just sit back, relax, and I want you to enjoy the video.
Sandra Bland, say her name. Get out of the car. Found in their jail cell hang. Funny, most don't find it strange that this long history of human degradation still remains unchanged after 246 years of generational bondage wherein Black women were not free to live, free to move, free to be princesses who grow up to be queens like Ayanna Jones. Shot in her sleep. She was just a baby. Say her name. Or wives who love their husbands, or mothers who nurture and protect their children, or sisters who build beautiful bonds that last forever, or daughters who know their mothers and fathers' faces because they weren't stripped away from still bleeding wombs, or strong brown hands that wipe tears away from the salt-stained faces of mothers who had to endure the painful frustration of helplessly watching their children sold off to these faraway plantations, because to be Black in America could mean nothing greater than a destiny of enslavement or even death.
Sustained one shot in the lower right chin, and the other 6 hit him in the chest and the body.
It's a brutal history that refuses to be laid to rest, like Rakia Boyd, say her name. See, the remnants of racism remain unchanged, yet whoever stops to feel what it must have really felt for young children to grow up never knowing their birthright, or biological kinships where love and familial bonds are so tight and interwoven, whoever stops to think about how we've been conditioned to objectify our struggle as if it is frozen in this fictitious epic in time that minimizes the sublime, beautiful Black bodies that were stolen from a continent that was once golden, and she was golden. Diamond encrusted, born from the womb of Mother Africa, Alexia Christian, say her name. Funny how we're the only ones being trained to forget, as if the consequences of our history and struggle will cease to exist when we fix our lips to dismiss the atrocity that it was and still is, as we run to social media to ease our social consciousness by simply hashtagging Natasha McKenna. No, say her name. How can we not face the blame if it is in our failure to to recognize and rise up that the legacies of the ancestors who struggled for us died in vain. Funny, most don't find it strange that the history of disregard for Black queens remains unchanged after 346 years of fighting for inclusion under the precepts of this nation's constitution. Our freedom and equality are still an illusion, got us standing on the front line screaming, Black lives matter, because Black life in America is still not recognized as being fully human, but she was fully human, and her life, cause, and death matter. Tanisha Anderson, say her name. After all, if the Black man was only considered 3/5 a human, what must the Black woman be? How loud do we have to scream to the world to set us free? Free to love, free to live, free to be. More than just pieces of armor or strong backbones propping up Black men, or pieces of strange fruit hanging from the limbs of this nation's poplar tree. Funny, most don't find it strange that after 397 years of struggle, we are still being silenced as we try in vain to scream. Yet, with every queen falling, we are still left calling on God to give us the strength, guide us, and protect us when nobody else will, because we are still left hashtagging a history of lynchings with Marie Scott and Mary Turner endings in 2016. Still, we hashtag Joyce Cornell as the only way. Hashtag Athena Jones to remember. Hashtag never forget. Hashtag Eliza Bryant. Hashtag Kendra Chapman to hashtag free Jasmine Richards. No, hashtag say her name. The purpose behind the piece Say Her Name is to first and foremost pay homage to the sisters and the queens who have lost their lives to what I consider and what I've classified as neo-lynching in America. Say Her Name, specifically the numbers of African American women who have been taken into custody by law enforcement and then come out under what most would consider suspicious circumstances, wherein their deaths are generally ruled suicides. Black women were not free to live, free to move, free to be. So I wanted to make sure that, one, we contextualize their names and not just make their names about a hashtag. So when I speak about no hashtags, a lot of times when we're engaged in movement, we take the names of the victims, we take the names of the fallen, and we put a hashtag in front of them, and then it kind of minimizes or negates their death, their lives, and their struggle. And so I really wanted to do the piece to pay homage to the sisters who have lost their lives contemporarily, and also the ancestors who lost their lives and never had a voice.
Well, that is a wonderful video, and I think it sets up a wonderful opportunity for us to prepare to launch in. I saved the best for last because I have to make sure, y'all, I sleep with this woman every night. And so I want to make sure that you all know one of the greatest women that you all understand. This is the cream in my coffee, the sugar in my pie, the peach in my cobbler, and all that good stuff. Hallelujah. But no, I wanted to make sure that we know, that you all know and understand who this woman is. She is the wife to Stephen.
All right.
With 2 children, Seth Paul and Disney Victoria L. She is the director of the Trailblazer Youth Ministry, and she serves as part of the marketing branding team at Journey of Faith United Methodist Church here in Humble, Texas, with a Bachelor of Arts in Business Marketing from Clark Atlanta University. All the HCBU.
All right.
She is a certified candidate for ministry as a deacon in the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church, and she is currently pursuing a Master of Divinity at Perkins School of Theology at Southern Methodist University, class of 2021. Why don't you give it up for my one and my only, Pastor Deneen Goldsmith. Okay, just all right. Let's move on, y'all. Let's go ahead.
2 of us together.
Yeah, we tonight. All right, come on. Here we go. So, as we jump in here, listen, check this out. In a recent article for abcnews.com titled "After Breonna Taylor's Death: A Look at Other Black Women Killed during police encounters. Journalist Christina Carrego writes, as George Floyd's death focuses renewed attention on the African-American men who have been killed by police officers across the country and the deep-seated issue of bias in policing. Advocates are also saying that dozens of African-American women over the last few decades who have been killed by police or died in their custody are a part of the conversation that is missing. From Illinois bumpers to Alberta Spruill, Sandra Bland to Breonna Taylor, many African-American women were either killed by police or died in police custody. The vast majority were shot, and a number of cases involved mental illness and controversial no-knock warrants. While the rate of death for Black women is much lower than Black men who died by police brutality, it has been amplified recently by the case of Taylor, whose case is now under investigation by the FBI. Which brings me to the first question for the panel on tonight. African-American men are being stopped by police, arrested, incarcerated, and killed at disproportionately higher rates than any other ethnic group in America. How do you feel when you see Black men, particularly ones that you know or are close to being accosted by law enforcement, knowing that the encounters could turn fatal?
Okay, so I'll start.
Well, Valerie, go ahead.
I think that regardless as to whether or not I know them, I'm close to them, when you see something like that, not only is it alarming, not only is it hurtful rather, but it almost puts you in rage, because I'm looking at my brother, I'm looking at my father, I'm looking at my nephew, I'm looking at my amazing godsons, I'm looking at the students that I teach every day. And so when you see someone like a George Floyd or a Rayshard Brooks, or anybody of African-American hue that's a male being accosted by the police like that and treated very unfairly with a force that is not warranted, especially if they are not resisting arrest. And even if they are, I think sometimes, we take for granted that even though they're resisting arrest, that the force that's being used, some people say it's okay. No, it's not, because that's where your training comes in. So for me, it's very hurtful. It's painstaking. And these are the things that I pray about. These are the things that I'm constantly warning my students about and my nephews about. And those are the hard conversations. And I know we haven't gotten there yet, but those are the hard conversations that we have in Black America.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody else got to share on that?
Yeah, I will absolutely echo Valerie's sentiments in that it is heartbreaking to watch. I mean, the lack of care and consideration that we see as it relates to our Black men is just disturbing, to say the least. I mean, we watched on television George Floyd, pleading for his life, calling out for his mother, while this police officer had his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds and casually had his hand in his pocket while his co-workers, his colleagues looked on and watched this thing happen. And George Floyd, unfortunately, is one of several lives that we've seen be taken away from us for crimes that, are questionable in terms of were they even crimes to begin with. And so it's scary when you think about your spouses, your brothers, your cousins, your nephews, your loved ones. Our only hope for them is we want you to come home, right? That's our goal for them. Every time they leave our house, we want you to come home. Yeah. And that's troubling that that's always top of mind for us as Black women.
Mm-hmm. And, it traumatizes the whole community. And you may recall, so I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, where Freddie Gray died 5 years ago under, questionable circumstances. And there was some unrest, and there was a video that went viral of a Black mother going and getting her son who was probably looked to be around 16, 17 years old, and she laid him out. And there were people that were like, oh, she's a strong mother, she's this, she's that. That was fear, because she knew if her son got caught up with the police and got in the system, or worse, didn't even make it home because he was harmed in some way. And that was, to me, when I saw that, I saw trauma, I saw fear, I saw a woman who had seen too much to let her son stay down there. And how healthy is that for her? How healthy is that for that relationship that she has with her son? And so it was really, you know, she was getting all these congratulations. That was fear.
Yeah. And crazy enough, the children don't realize how far reaching the consequences of their actions are.
Right.
And you put your mother in a whole nother level of worry, stress, anxiety, right? Unnecessarily, but not knowing just how much stress and anxiety that can cause, right? Let me ask you all, it's been about 109 days since Breonna Taylor lost her life while asleep at her home, as officers executed a no-knock warrant on March 13th. How do you all feel about the lack of urgency to bring Breonna's killers to justice? We're gonna stop there. How do you all feel about the lack of urgency?
I'm not surprised by it. You know, you would think that at this point, you would be surprised that it's not happening. There's no sense of urgency, nothing's going on, but it doesn't surprise me at this point because that's the new normal and that's what's to be expected now. So I'm just not surprised.
Unfortunately.
I would agree with Matasha and just say that, I mean, unfortunately at this point, I just think it's kind of the norm, and kind of just relates to women, kind of particularly minority women being like double minorities. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I think we've become numb to it. So it's just like, just another situation.
I would say it angers me because I think in the midst of the George Floyd incident and everything that was going on surrounding that, somewhere along the way, her situation and her case got lost in the sauce, so to speak. But at the end of the day, if Black lives matter, all Black lives matter. And African-American women have always kind of taken a back seat as it relates to justice, as it relates to anything that is pushing their rights forward. And so it bothers me that it is now 109, 110 days into this, and her killers are still somewhere running free. And so I think, you know, she is just as much a part of the narrative as anyone else. And I think it behooves us as African-American women not to allow our lives and our voices to be lost in all of this. I think we should be the ones to make sure that her name is still in the forefront. We should be the ones to make sure that she's still trending. We should be the ones that's pushing the envelope to make sure that she gets just as much justice as a George Floyd. Not to say that our African-American men aren't important, but we are equally as important. And I think sometimes, you know, we settle for the status quo when status quo is not enough.
Oh, wait. Ooh. You said we settle for a status quo. Y'all say some more on that right there, please. Please.
Well, I think a lot of times, you know, we settle for what's given to us. You know what I'm saying? And instead of making our matters matter, you know, because nothing matters unless it matters to us first, right? And so until we make sure that we speak on it, that we act on it, that we move on it, that we have conversations like this about it, and not only conversations like this, but we are also mobilizing to make change, then change will never happen. So I think we settle for, you know, the little pieces that are given to us that say, okay, you know, women get one seat at the table, when one seat is not enough, you know. And so I think that we have to be more assertive and aggressive when it comes to us, because if we don't speak up for us, nobody's going to speak up for us.
I agree. I want to talk about the urgency. What was your question about urgency?
So the question is, how do you all feel about the lack of urgency to bring Breonna's killers to justice?
I believe it's really a psychological thing also, meaning when it comes to George Floyd, we visually saw the death versus African-American women, even including Sandra Bland. You know, we saw her on the video. She was upset that she got stopped, and then she goes to jail, and then we see her coming out on the stretcher.
So it's left at a leg. And
so there's a mystique there versus somebody. What happened to George Floyd? It's unarguable. Meaning we saw that, so it messes with our psyche. So I do think that there is a lack of urgency, but then it's like you have to go to the root of why there's a lack of urgency, simply because African American women are handled differently. You know, even what's the young lady? It was a couple years ago where she was riding with her boyfriend and she was taping and the boyfriend got shot sitting next to her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Castillo was the gentleman who got shot.
Yes, Philando Castillo, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, correct. Now, she's right there. And
camera out.
I mean, invisibly taping, but yet and still, it was the African-American male that was harmed. And so I just think that, you know, when it comes to being in the forefront, I think we're handled differently versus I think that there's a whole nother level of disregard for the African-American male. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So there is a lack of urgency, but we have to peel back the layers and find out why there's a lack of urgency. Simply because, you know, the way that we've been handled has been really like in the back, you know, and that goes back to our ancestral days, you know, when they handled us in the back.
So if I hear you correctly, almost kind of biblically speaking, right? When you read the Bible, you see that there's a strong patriarchal, right, emphasis in Scripture, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not preaching tonight, I promise y'all. However, there's kind of still this kind of same attitude in today's culture, even in today's culture, where if the powers that be, let me say it that way, mm-hmm. Can maintain a more patriarchal disposition, then we can keep the feminine voice from being a mainstay to guide the course of the future or policy or how culture right. How culture is designed.
Right. Right. So like I said, it's just a matter of just kind of like just keeping us back, just keeping us off
to the side.
Off to the side.
Let us handle this.
Right. But dealing with us in the dark.
Right.
So.
Well, I agree with Lady Deneen, and it's something that you said when you said that there is a stronger disdain for the African-American male. And I feel like, and I hate to say this because it's almost scary to even think about, but the African-American male is almost like an endangered species. And it's like they're so scared of our men. They're so scared of what they bring to culture. They're so scared of what they bring to industries across the board, from the sports industry to the media industry to education to the judicial system. They're so scared of our men, and so they take them out as if it's almost like genocide, you know, as if they're taking out a race, because if we can't reproduce, our men are a part of reproducing. If we can't reproduce ourselves, then they can continue to suppress us. So I think that there is a stronger disdain for African American males versus females.
But hold on, but make no mistakes about it. That's to the natural eye. But if you look at the core of it, it's really an attack on us.
Absolutely.
As women, because if you disable us, then you keep us off to the back. You mean if you disable our family unit, you keep us as single mothers. If you disable our family unit, then you keep us on the system. If you disable our family units, then you keep us undereducated. You see what I'm saying? So to the natural eye, it looks like the attack is against the African American male, and it is. Mm-hmm. However, like I said, let's peel back the layers and let's go to the root. To the root of it is really tearing us and bringing and dismembering us as African American women and building our family unit. You see what I'm saying?
Can I jump in here? I'm as y'all were talking, I was thinking about Michael Jordan, and everybody watched. A good majority of perhaps the world watched the recent documentary that went out back here about what's been a month and a half ago, 2 months, mm-hmm. And I was reminded in watching that whole series about the fact that although and yes, Michael pushed the envelope. Yes, Michael did not accept less than your best, even if that meant getting on your nerves to do so. And he says very clearly that was the way that I played the game because all I knew was to win, right? However, even in his drive, he changed the whole game and how teams approach the game of basketball. He changed the entertainment world. Everything, right? So it went beyond the court. And even when he got ready he was trying to become a part owner, wanted to buy into to the team that he basically ran to the forefront of the world. He wanted to buy in as a partner of the Bulls, and they wouldn't even make him a partner, not even a minority partner of this organization. Going back to what Valerie said, there's because of the fear or this intimidation of perhaps who he was. So let's keep him in the background. But I think my wife said it, make that point is poignant. That and so if you keep the African American male in the background, then in essence you're trying to do the same to the African American female. That's Absolutely. What I hear y'all saying, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Considering the fact that women founded the Black Lives Matter, all right, here we go. BLM, founded by women, Black women. Why is it that African American women remain somewhat of an afterthought when focusing on justice?
I think that, and I think Valerie touched on it in her comments as well. No, Pastor, you did when you talked about the patriarchy. That was evident in the civil rights movement as well. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of focus on the men in the civil rights movement and very little focus on the women, other than somebody like a Fannie Lou Hamer or, but for the most part, it was really focused on the men. And so even within, the issue of racism, even within that, there is also sexism involved. Mm-hmm. And that, and it's not about minimizing what's going on with African American men, because that is certainly, a crisis situation. However, there's no discussion or very little discussion of Black women, period, in this country. And I remember the young lady who went She went somewhere, I want to say Cancun, but I may have messed that up. But anyway, Natalie something, young white girl. She was missing, and and I mean, that's all you saw. Meanwhile, there are Black women and Black girls every day that are disappeared, and you don't see anything. And so there is, my question is, are we even seen within our own race sometimes? And is the patriarchy such that, because this is about power. This is about who's got the power, who's got the influence, and is there, even among us, is there still having the Black woman kind of at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak?
Subservient.
And so I think that's exactly, and I think that's something that, as African Americans, that's a whole different discussion to have around the role of Black women in the justice movement, because I think a lot is overshadowed.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Murray, because
oh Lord, well, thank you for promoting me to a doctor. But anyway, go ahead. I'll take it. Go ahead.
Take it. There you go. Receive it.
Yes, thank you.
So let me ask you, because you raise an interesting point for me. Even with the civil rights movement, it being, about, though we know the movement was about much more, but considering the Black men, Emmett Till, I mean, you just keep going down the line, have been, just cut down. If we're talking about Black Lives Matter being a movement launched by women and African American women specifically, I often say there's not enough credit given to, we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King, and I respect Dr. King, I do, and I love what he did, being at the forefront of the civil rights movement. But I don't think enough credit is given to one lady who really was the forerunner to the civil rights movement, and that's Miss Ella Baker. All right.
Yeah.
Ella, but a lot of people don't know Ella Baker was the one that started the civil rights movement. Dr. Martin Luther King, he took it and he ran with it. She handed it to him. The torch was basically put in his hand, and Dr. King took it and ran with it. But it was Ella Baker who began having conversations around the country, from the North, y'all know, down into the South, meeting with folk. Where did she start meeting them at? In the church, right? The church was the ground for the launch of the civil rights movement. So talk to me. What do y'all think about that? Ella Baker, she as important as she is to the civil rights movement, but you don't hear much about her.
Well, unfortunately, we deal with a double-edged sword, because to be an Ella Baker and to be a forerunner in whatever you do as a Black woman, you have to be assertive. You have to be sometimes aggressive. You have to be willing to let the world know I am smart and I belong here, wherever that may be. But then you're labeled as the angry Black woman. You're labeled as the aggressive Black woman, the one that has an attitude about herself, the one that has a chip on her shoulder. And so, in so many ways, that has an effect on us, because we try to present ourselves in the most presentable way. But yet, instead, if we assert ourselves too much, then okay, you're angry, you're bitter, you're Black, you know what I'm saying? But then if we're too passive, then we just get overlooked. And so we have to come into that. And so we come into this affirmation of ourselves. And then people say, oh, okay, again, she has an attitude about, who was that rapper that said, as a woman in the industry, you cannot be afraid to be called derogatory names. I think it was Missy Elliott.
No, it was
Or Little Kim.
no, it wasn't Lil Kim, wasn't Missy Elliott. It was Nicki.
No, it was before her time. It was before her time.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I've heard Nicki Minaj say. I've heard Nicki Minaj say that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, said that, you know.
I believe it was Missy Elliott that talks about that.
Yeah.
And even people like Queen Latifah and
Yeah.
MC Light.
Yes. Said that, you know, being strong women in their industry and being at the top of their game, said, you know, they had to come to terms with being called derogatory names simply because that was what was acceptable, because with them being aggressive, with them being assertive, then that was what they were called. And so they had to come into that and say, okay, that's fine. If that's what you're gonna call me, fine, but I'm still here. And so that mentality is real. And so like, that's why I said we have to deal with a two-edged sword and really find that balance in being presentable and being ladies, but still coming into being at the top of our game in who we are.
So what would you all say is a solution? What would you all say is a solution to causing that shift to take place where society, and maybe not, is because it's not everybody, it's not all men, let's say it that way, that tend to treat women as an afterthought or as a in this whole hierarchical understanding of, you know, I'm above you, you beneath me, or I'm in front of you, you behind me. What is it that that you all think can be done in a very practical sense? Because to me, if we're talking about Black men and the intimidation or the fear that takes place in society from Black men to white America, we know at the core of that there's fear. At the core of racism is fear. At the core of racism is intimidation, right? And you're intimidated by my presence. Then at the same token, within just let's talk about within the race as well. What is it? Why is it then that Black men will be intimidated by the Black woman or man? Period. Right? Did that make sense? What I'm asking?
No,
It does.
So,
We always bump heads. Go ahead.
no
problem.
I'm just messing with him. I'm messing with him.
I wanted to jump in and address the initial question, and then I want to come back to Lady D's statement about the angry Black woman moniker that has been put on so many of us. So in the opening video, you heard the sister talk about constitutionally that Black men are regarded as 3/5 of a human. And unfortunately, Black women are even regarded as being secondary to that.
Yeah.
But we also know that as Black women, you know, the notion of being a Black woman is synonymous with strength. And so as our Black men are being killed, being mistreated, they're feared, Black women are always there to pick up the pieces, right? And we become the backbone of our families when our men are absent because they are jailed, because they are on drugs, because they have these challenges that society has sort of imposed upon them. We pick up the pieces as Black women. And because of that, there's a lot that we shoulder. And as we are shouldering those things, and we are still working hard to be mothers and sisters and daughters and executives and entrepreneurs, there's a seriousness and a solemnness that comes with all of that. And that is what is being regarded and read as being angry. Absolutely. We're strong, and we're managing and shouldering a lot. And you've heard people like Michelle Obama be referred as an angry Black woman. You've heard Serena Williams be referred to as an angry Black woman. I've heard myself be referred to as an angry Black woman. And I don't think that any of us are truly angry Black women, but we are women that have a sense of seriousness because of everything that we shoulder as the backbone to the Black family.
Good.
Amen.
Let me jump in on that because I tend to think I tend to think of the Black woman as a palm tree.
Okay.
And you know, a storm can roll in on a palm tree. Hurricanes roll in on a palm tree. And one thing I found out about a palm tree is that a palm tree, sorry about that. A palm tree, and that was my mama. Wow. Hey, Mom. But a palm tree under the pressure will bend. Palm trees very rarely break.
That's good, babe.
Right?
That's good.
But when the storm rolls out, the palm tree will stand straight back up and get ready for whatever's next.
That's a sermon.
That's a word. Yeah. That's a word.
That's a word.
Get some brownie points?
Yes.
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 All right.
Well, I think I want to add to the conversation in saying that I think women, African-American women by and large, have understood that most industries that we venture into are good old boy systems. And we have had to put on a strong face just to be heard. And again, it goes back to what Melkia said, what Pastor Deneen said, that we're not angry, but we have to be our own, again, voice, because if not, we'll get looked over. We'll get swept under the rug as if we weren't there. And so when you know that you're entering into a good old boy system, there's a certain way and there's a certain face and there's a certain a way that a woman has to carry herself in that system. And there's also a certain way that you have to navigate that system. And so, you know, it may come off as angry and it may come off as some other choice words that I shall not use in this platform. But the reality of it is that sometimes I have to be that way just so that I can maneuver. Not that I am that, I never embody that. But because you're portraying me as that, because I'm not going with your flow. I think a lot of times when we go against the grain of what they think we should do, then we get labeled. And so, you know, it makes us look like the bad guy, but at the same time, let's put the shoe on the other foot. You know, if you did the same thing that I did, you wouldn't be labeled. So then don't label me. And in order for us to get a seat at the table, in order for us to have any type of upward mobility in any of these industries, there's a certain way that an African-American woman has to carry herself.
Absolutely agree.
And Valerie, I would just add to that one small thing. So as we are maneuvering and as we are working our way to get that proverbial seat at the table, we have to also be sure that we are creating room for others that also have a seat at that table. Because sometimes I think that we forget that there can be more than one seat.
Yeah,
and
That's right.
subscribe to, you know, either it is you or me, without recognition of the fact that it can be you and me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has to be this mindfulness that we need to create space for others.
And I also want to say that we don't have to be in. I think sometimes our African-American male counterparts have to realize I'm not in competition with you. Like, I'm not here to compete against you. I'm here to compete against a system that consistently seeks to suppress African-American women. And so I'm not your competition. I'm not here to fight against you. 9 times out of 10, we're fighting for the same things. We're on the same team. And so instead of looking at me as your competition, look at me as your teammate. And understand that if you go up, I go up. And if I go up, you go up. But a lot of times we go into situations where we're looked at as we're competing against our male counterparts. And I'm not here to compete against you.
That's good. That's good.
I just want to say one thing about anger though, and I'm gonna, and then I'll stop talking.
Oh, yeah.
for every dollar that a white man makes, a white woman makes around 80 cents. I believe a Black woman makes 65 cents. We tend to be the most educated and the least recognized. We tend to be at the bottom of the corporate ladder in most organizations. Very, very few Black female executives. I don't know that we even have a Black woman running a company anymore at this point. We're much more likely to die from childbirth in the hospitals because the doctors don't listen to us. And I think that's a good reason to be angry.
Mhm.
And so my concern is when we try to tamp that down, stress, heart disease, all these things that plague us in very different ways than they do even African-American males. And so I'm not saying we should go in there and just start cussing people out, but I think it's okay to acknowledge anger. Because I'm angry about Breonna Taylor.
Yeah.
I am. She was asleep in her bed. And her killers are walking free. I'm angry about Sandra Bland because nobody cares enough to even investigate what's happening here. And so I think that there's a righteous anger. I look at somebody like a Stacey Abrams who has turned her anger into having an election stolen from her. She didn't lose that election. That election was stolen from her. And focusing on dealing with voter suppression. And so, when I think about anger and we're not angry, I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but I am. Yeah. But it's what we do with it. And what does it motivate us to do? And because I think we have a right to be angry. I really do. So that's it. That's my thing on anger.
to go with what you were saying as well, I definitely feel we have a right to be angry. But to me, from my point of view, what it seems like is that we're only angry for a little bit, or when something happens, or so you don't hear a lot about different instances until something comes up, and now we're angry for a little while, and then it fades away, and then something else comes up, so we're all angry again. And so other cultures can't really take us seriously because there's no consistency with us and our movements and the things that we're passionate about. We don't keep pushing, even when nothing major or on the mainstream news is happening. We still should keep pushing the same, and sometimes it takes major things to happen for all of us to stand up and come together and go towards a common cause, right? And then that's when everyone wants to listen, because now we're finally all on the same page. And then if given enough time and enough time passes by, then we're all disconnected again. And so I think until the African-American culture comes together and collectively stands together consistently, I think that it's going to be hard for other cultures to take us serious.
So this came up the last couple of weeks. If y'all tuned in, one of the things was that you cannot let gas prices go down, decrease gas prices to make me feel good for a while because it's election time. And I'm not going to keep speaking up and letting my voice be heard about the matters or the real issues that's going on. Stop trying to sway me. One of the other things that y'all would know historically politicians did was they would feed folk, right? All right, because if I can feed your stomach, maybe I can take your attentions off the other matters that you have been angry about. And so when I hear you all say that we have to see past the incentives for during election time and keep pressing. I think that was one of the things about the civil rights movement is that our elders made sure to keep pushing. They didn't stop. They didn't let down. And guess what? they had to keep telling each other and encouraging each other all along the way, right? We can't stop. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Don't just settle, right? For a little bit of change. We have to push for ultimate change. You were gonna say something like that?
I was gonna say true story. And you remember I was pregnant with my daughter and went in for a checkup, and it was 3 weeks before I was due to give birth, and the doctor said something's wrong, but everything's okay, so we have to take her. And I remember we were sitting in the house, and I was scared. I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with my child? And the nurse, and it was a white nurse. She said, Ms. Goldsmith, she said, you have nothing to worry about. She said, because studies show, she said, and everyone in the medical field knows this, that the toughest child in utero that will overcome all adversities is the African American girl. And I was like, what?
I've heard that before as well.
Yeah. She said,
study show.
Yeah. She said, she said, and this ain't something I'm making up. She said, it is a medical fact. She said, so if anyone's going to be all right, it's going to be Little Disney. And then, of course, my pastor, my doctor, he came in, he said the same thing. My doctor Asian. And he was like, look, she gonna make it. And so I take that, and come to find out something was wrong. The cord was wrapped around her ankle. But I take that, and I really began to really think about that. And I said, Lord, that is powerful, that in utero, before we even enter into this world, we have been deemed the strongest and the toughest over against every other race and gender. And I think that speaks volumes for who we are, period. But I also think that also speaks volumes as to why people have tried to suppress us, because it was destined to us before we even came into the world. And so, of course, I'm going to be studying that even more deeper, of course, and I am determined to do a series on that. But I think that that's powerful, and I think it speaks directly to who we are. I think it speaks directly to our DNA. I think it speaks directly to the fiber, and most importantly, I think it speaks directly to who God has purpose for us to be. So with that, it makes sense as to why we are, like Melkia said, the backbone, why we are tenacious, why we are the resilience. And that's not to diminish anybody else, but it's just to come and to affirm who we are, because it's in us.
Can I jump in on that?
Absolutely.
Because I think you highlight, there's a clip a small clip that I want to show y'all that speaks to tenacity, that speaks to resilience, and resilience of African American people, Black folks, and Black women. So I want to share this clip with you all. Why don't y'all just take time and just kind of chillax. I want y'all to hear this, because this kind of sets us up for the next set of questions that I need to pose to the panel, because I want to hear y'all's feedback on this.
Okay.
Got a little bit of a technical issue. We'll roll that back because y'all gotta catch this. Okay. All right. I don't know if we're gonna we may not quite make it on this one. May not quite make it on this one. That's all right. That's all right. Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama in a speech, she was giving an address at the University of Tuskegee, and in that address, she talks about where they are and the place of pivot for these young people who have reached the pinnacle of their education at Tuskegee. In preparation for going out into the world now and becoming career-driven African American young people and in the workforce. And what she basically says is, she says, I want to give you some information now to help you. Basically, she says, because the education that you have received in the world out there may not necessarily be received well, because you have to work harder at being better in the workplace because of your color. She says, in essence, that she says, if anybody can speak from experience about how you were minimized, if anybody can speak from experience about how their integrity was questioned, how their citizenship was questioned, I can speak from that place. She says, I know what it's like to be walking down the street and folk clench their purse and cross over to the other side of the street because they're scared of you walking, your mere presence coming down the same side of the sidewalk. She says, I know what it's like to be at the store and the clerk makes a sly remark as if whatever you're purchasing at the store, you're not able to afford to buy it. She says, I know too what it's like for people to stand over you and give you the look. The look. What is that look? That's that look of, what are you doing here? That's that look of, I have to keep an eye on you because I don't trust you. And she says to them, in essence, this is what you need to know and you need to understand, that at all costs, that you have to keep your head high. You have to walk in the confidence and the authority of where you've come from and keep your eye on the prize to where you're going, right? Having said that, in many cases, y'all, discrimination increases toward African-American men as they move up the social ladder. Is feminism and racism equal yokes of combined discrimination that makes their perspectives unique? Do you all think?
I don't think they're equal. And it goes back to my comment about, we're not competing against you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, women are not competing against their male counterparts. Women honestly are competing against what, once again, is the whole glass ceiling for women. And let me keep you in your quote unquote rightful place. So racism is a separate fight, in my opinion, as for African-American men in any sect in society. I think that, you know, and I think that not only that, but to Pastor Denise's point, is a double-edged sword for a woman, because not only do I have to deal with the fact that I'm Black, I have to deal with the fact that I am a woman. Mm-hmm. So while, you know, there may seem now to be more African-American women in the C-suite, or more African-American women, ladies that are managers or heads of departments, that's come with a high price. And it's also come with much fight. So no, I don't think that they're equally yoked at all. I don't think that they're on the same playing field. I don't think that they are meant even to be against the African-American man. But I think that it just speaks to the fact, when you look across industries across the board, we are more represented now in the 21st century than we've ever been. And I think, again, that it came with a price. I think that it came with us being silenced in many instances. And then even with us being in C-suites and in management and as department heads, look at the inequity in pay. So an African-American male can have the same position that I have, and he's getting paid much more. How equitable is that? So I don't think that the feminism and racism definitely don't bear the same yoke when it comes to the African-American male, not at all.
I want to underscore something, Valerie, that you said, because there are more of us represented in corporate America, but there still are not many, particularly when we talk about the C-suite. So when you look at the C-suite across Fortune 500 companies, there are only 4% of us being Black women represented in C-suites across the US. Very, very low numbers. And then when you talk about Black female CEOs at the Fortune 500 level, there are none. There was one, Ursula Burns, who was the CEO of Xerox Corporation, but since she stepped down from her role, there are none. Wow. And so there are all of these microaggressions that we have to deal with because there are not many of us at that proverbial table. And there are things that are said to us. I look at my own organization where it's an organization of nearly 50,000 employees. When I look at the Black female executives that are represented there, there are myself and 3 others. Wow. Wow. And unfortunately, over the course of my career of 25 years, I've had things said to me like, you're too confident, you're too bold. And that other thing that, Valerie, you wouldn't dare say, right. that they say about us. But when our male counterparts exhibit those same behaviors, they're rewarded and recognized favorably for that. But we're not expected to show up in that way. And so these are the things that, going back to what I said earlier, these microaggressions are some of the multitudes of things that we have to shoulder as women of color. And ultimately, we've got to consider the implications that all of this has on mental health for Black women. And I know we talked about this a bit last week when we had the panel with Black men, but it's a very real reality for Black women and mental health, because we are shouldering a lot. We've got to recognize that, and we have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves before we can take care of others. And generally, it's the other way around. We take care of others before we take care of ourselves.
I can't begin to express the countless number of African-American women retired from the corporate world or from the workforce who talk about the mental toll that they have experienced. In so many instances that they're in a place even in life now, as retirees, where there's certain things that they just don't even want to do, maybe even volunteer for, if it reminds them of the context from which they retired from, right? So I can't begin to tell you how many women that I have run into that talk about that. Somebody else was getting ready to say something. Val, were you getting ready to respond, or was somebody else gonna say something?
No.
Okay, I thought I saw a raise up. All right. I want to cut across here because I want listen, if y'all have questions, please drop those in the comment section, because we're getting ready to switch over and we're getting ready to go. It's 8:14. I want y'all to drop some questions in the chat box, because I want to give these ladies an opportunity to respond to your questions. But I did want to ask the question here: what are the conversations, y'all, that African-American mothers are having with their sons or daughters about racism, and how best to respond on the street, in school, and in the workplace? What conversations are you having with your sons, your nephews, your nieces, your daughters?
Well, my son is 6. So the thing that I can do now, I'm just speaking affirmations to him, just really affirming him and just really, making sure he's present and he's connected. He understands what's going on in society, and he understands the differences between his friends, and he's okay with looking different. My children are 5 and 6, and so I dare not bring this burden upon them at this age. However, the best thing that I can do as a mother is just to, affirm them so that when it's time to talk about it, they will already be in that place of affirmation, and it will be a smooth transition. So we don't have that to deal with at this time. However, we are talking Disney, and she's a girl. She got these 2 dolls from her uncle. Shout out to Uncle Terrell, you did that. But anyway, so she got these 2 dolls, and she got one of them is a LOL. They're 2 LOL dolls. One of them is Dazzle. Dazzle has pink hair. And then the other one is Royal B. Royal B has this fabulous afro, and it has different colors, and Royal B is Royal B. And the first thing Disney says is, "Oh my God, Mommy, we look alike. Oh my God, we look alike. I love her. We look alike." And that was music to my ears, because she understands the power of unity at the age of 5, and the power of how looking alike is wonderful. Now I'm a little disappointed in her because she's kicked Dazzle to the curb. So I need her to bring Dazzle back, because Dazzle is fabulous too.
She identified with Royal B as a doll or a woman of color.
Yes, and I took her to the doctor yesterday, and she held on to her. She's just been, oh my God. And I had to say, hey, don't forget Dazzle. Don't forget Dazzle. Because I want her to understand, yes, you identify with Royal B, but Dazzle still exists. She still exists, and she's still real. But I'm enjoying her affirming herself and just really loving Royal B, and just, oh my God, I want to dress Royal B. I want to take her clothes off, put her clothes back on. And so that's really, really empowering for me, and I'm really encouraged by that.
My son is 11. And the conversations have already begun. And he said to me one evening, I'm still a kid. Why do we need to have these conversations? And I said to him, well, unfortunately, Tamir Rice was still a kid. He was 14 years old. Emmett Till was still a kid. He was only 16 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I want him to have a very acute awareness of how he is viewed and regarded in this world, but I don't want to instill fear in him at all. Right. I want him to be well aware of his worth. I want him to be well aware of his rights. Mm-hmm. I don't ever want him to feel like he needs to be subservient to anyone. Mm-hmm. I want him to respect people, but I want him to also ensure that he expects to be respected, that he carries himself in such a way that he commands respect. And so these are the things that we talk about. He needs to have an awareness, but he also needs to know that he is worthy. He is worthy of being treated like a human being, and he should expect that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I had I was watching last night, and I don't know if any of you ladies caught it, but Oprah did a special with Black fathers last night, 100 Black fathers. And I watched and listened as something similar to this question was brought up to the men. And this couple had a conversation with their sons, who are my godson's age, Seth's age, 5 years old. And they played a clip of them having this conversation with their son, and you could literally see the innocence leave this little boy's face. Mm-hmm. And so that is the hurtful part of this, That is the unfortunate part of this. And that is also the part that angers me, that we have to take the innocence from our children at a certain age. Because racism is not taught. I mean, it's not, they're not born racist. They're taught that. But I myself have nephews, grown nephews, like I said, my amazing godsons, and even my niece. I was recently on vacation in Florida, and we were out and about, and this area was a predominantly Caucasian area, and we were just walking, and there were two Caucasian girls standing outside of this shop, and they were passing out samples. Hi, miss, you know, would you like to try one? Would you like, excuse me, miss, would you like to try one? And when we walked past, being the only brown little pebbles in the area, they looked at us and they said, girls. Now I got real offended, just like your face, Pastor D, was my face. And I turned around and I politely said, don't ever call me a girl another day in your life. And I walked off. Then I had to have this whole conversation with my 11-year-old niece who was with me, because she was like, why did you respond like that? And I said, what you have to realize is that within itself was demeaning. And not only was it demeaning, but just like they were just as warm and welcoming to everyone else that walked by, they could have presented that same attitude towards us. But I had to take her and have a whole sidebar conversation with her about just the vernacular that they use with us. So my point is, the conversations that I'm having with my high school students before they leave for summer, in previous years, of course, not this year, but in previous years, and even my nephews and my cousins, is that, you know, get home. Like, be careful, understand your rights, respect authority, because I don't care if the police is brown, black, or white, you respect authority. But most importantly, I need you to get home safely and let the adults deal with whatever the other issues that they may have presented to you. And then, you know, also be mindful. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Like, you know, you're driving, they pull you over, keep your hands on the steering wheel. Keep your hands where they can see you. Don't reach for anything. And it's unfortunate that you have to have all of these, you know, conversations we have to have them with our kids, but it's our reality, because at the end of the day, I'd rather you come back walking through my door or through your parents' door than for me to go visit you at the morgue.
That's real talk.
Yeah. So y'all, I have to ask this question just out of curiosity, and these conversations are not so much about politics. Of course, y'all know it is that time of year. The nation is pivoting. It's voting time, and we're going to say something about that in a minute here. But I just have this question because I'm curious to hear your response to this. Amy Klobuchar dropped out of being considered for the vice presidency of America and urged Joe Biden to select a woman of color as his running mate. Do you all think that choosing an African-American woman at this time in our country is the right direction?
No. I'm sorry, that came out. I'm sorry, y'all.
Tell us how you really feel, Pastor D.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lady D. It's just kind of like, not that you're feeling sorry for me. I don't even know the right words. It's almost like you're just taking a Band-Aid and smacking it over, you know, a situation, and you're not doing it because that's really what everyone wants. It's just you're doing it to try to appease the audience or make us feel that you really care, you know, or that's what you want to see happen. So I don't think there's any sincerity in that at all.
I say no, because I think that there's still some healing. I think there's still some education, that there's still some victories that we have to win as African-American women. And I just would not want to see us in that crossfire due to the pulse of this country now. You know, my heart goes out to Joe Biden, just coming in and having to clean up the mess. And, you know, for so many years, going back to our ancestral years, we've had to clean up so many messes. I don't want a Black woman anywhere in that. Because again, I just think that our country needs to heal from some things. So.
Yeah, I think the answer is having the right running mate. And if that person turns out to be a Black woman, wonderful. The is that our current administration is incredibly tone deaf to the things that are happening in our country. And so what we need and what so many of us are desperate for is someone in government that understands and is willing to make changes so that the things that we face as people of color begin to change.
Mm-hmm.
To simply put somebody in office because they are a Black woman does not necessarily mean that their agenda is representative of the masses' agenda. So if the agenda doesn't align with what it is we need in this country, then it just becomes pandering, right? You're putting somebody Black in there because you think it checks a box for us. But the checking of the box shouldn't be in the color of someone's skin. The checking of the box should be around, is this person's agenda aligned with my own?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's good.
Any other thoughts?
I was just going to say, I agree with Melkia. I don't think they should be included solely because of that or excluded solely because of that. So if it's the right person, you know, for the reasons that were stated, I'm down. And if not, it's about getting the best, you know, the best person. But yeah, I agree. I think just doing it just because is not the way to go.
Yeah, yeah. Which brings up, highlights an interesting question that we have in the chat, y'all. I'm gonna throw this at you right now, if y'all would. A question was asked, why is it that men do not easily get behind us as leader, behind the African-American women as leader?
Yeah, well, that
How do you all think that?
from
Was that a question for me?
That came from one of my watch party watchers.
Okay.
So she was listening to the Ella Baker, when you were talking about Ella Baker and how she started the civil rights movement and kind of passed the baton, and how she felt like, or her stance was that an African-American man should have stood up and said, hey, you know, this is the real leader. Ella is the real leader. So why is it that we don't see a lot of men pushing women when it comes to women being in the forefront or leaders? So I think that was her initial question.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think it just kind of goes back to this whole man's world. This is the man's world, right? Ideology that the women, especially in that time, especially in, you know, in the 50s and the 60s, especially in that time where there was supposed to be, you know, this Black male out front, and the Black woman is supposed to just kind of be off to that, what y'all spoke about earlier, to the side, or silent, if you will, a silent support. Right. And to me, once again, that rolls back to intimidation, feeling like you're being upstaged, right? And I think that I think that we're in a time now where we need, as men, and this kind of came up last week, and we were talking about if it is as men that we have to be affirmed. Melkia kind of hit on it as well, that even when we're teaching our young men, that you don't have to be fearful of anybody. You can walk with your head, your ears over your shoulders, right, and your head up, And the same, if we're going to walk in and live in that authority and live in that confidence, then we also need to live in the confidence that we can get behind, right? An African American woman, our sisters in the struggle, and support them just as much as you all have supported us over the years. I was sharing this with my wife maybe last week. If you look at Genesis, okay, I'm gonna say this preaching moment, then I'm gonna let this one go, y'all. But in Genesis chapter 1, chapter 2, actually in the second narrative, creation narrative, God said after Adam had named everything, God said it is not good for man to be alone. All right. When God said that, the Bible says that he put Adam to sleep and he took from his rib and he made what? Woman. When he came to and he saw her, he got rid of it. He said, whoa, man, look at this. Watch this. Why would God now, everything up to this point has been created from dust, from the dirt. But God takes from Adam's rib to create woman, because the woman has been a support. Your rib cage supports your diaphragm. It supports your organs. It covers every vital organ from your heart on down, right? And so if you all have been a support for us, why then can we not be the same support to the body that has been supportive of us? That's how I think. But not all men are free in their thinking.
True.
And that's what I was gonna. I'm sorry, Pastor D. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna thank him because with us being in ministry, people have said, how is it the fact that both of y'all are preachers, and I thank God that as a African American man, I tell people all the time he pushes me. If it was up to him, I would be doing far more. But I'm going to hold it. And so that is refreshing. It is refreshing to be affirmed by my husband and to be pushed, and we're in the same field.
If God could, I believe like this, if God can speak through a mule, you know what, when he spoke to the prophet Jeremiah, then why would not God be able to speak through a woman? Why not? Why can't not God speak through one of his most valuable treasures? Why do we keep you in the shadow? Why do we keep you in the margins or in the wings when y'all have so much to say and so much to contribute? Don't just come to me in the shadows and ask for my wisdom, but put that wisdom on display. But again, that's just how I think.
All right.
This ain't.
Well, I think to your point, Pastor Stephen and Pastor Denise, men by and large don't share your mindset. And I'm not saying it's all men, but
right.
In order for us to have sustaining change in that area, a man's perspective has to change. And a man's value of a woman's voice has to change. And a man's value of what a woman brings to the table has to change. And so in a lot of instances, to the person's question and to their point, men don't get behind women because they don't lend themselves or open up their perspective to see a woman as a valuable source enough to get behind her. And then we can also attribute a lot of that to pride. A lot of times men function, and I love my male counterparts, but a lot of times they function in pride so much so to where, they're blinded by their pride, and their pride won't allow them to see the gift and the value found in their female counterparts.
I think that in essence, that is really the whole point to our conversation, is that from the Black man, but even from even with white America, the whole understanding, the whole point of the conversation here is there is a need for us to change the lens through which we view. I've been saying this for the last 3 weeks. Racism, systemically, is a lie, right? It is all a perpetuated lie, not a lie to say that it doesn't exist. It is a lie to keep us from understanding how much we actually really need each other, because there's a denial of the fact that I really need you.
Absolutely.
I really need you. Yeah. And I think that that is it's sad that that exists, because we could be so much further. Imagine. Let me just say it like this: it's possible that the vaccine, the very vaccine that we need right now for this pandemic, is on the tongue of an African American sister that's working somewhere in the medical field, but because she has been ostracized, because she's been pushed to the side, she's just holding on to the information, and then later on, when it's revealed, it's like, oh man, why didn't we? Why we should have been asked you. Well, I tried to show you, but you didn't want to hear from me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's possible that the cure for AIDS or the cure for cancer is on the tongue and in the mind of one of our African American sisters or African American brothers, right? However, if you constantly push to the side and you don't want to hear what else I have, then how can we help? Absolutely. Just saying. All right. One last one, y'all, and this has been good. This has been empowering for me and insightful for me. Larry McDuffie says systematic separation of the classes and sexes is just as much a part of racism as programs and policies are. How do we combat this in the wake of the new Black Lives Matter movement? And where do we go from here? Dr. Martin Luther King.
That's good, Larry.
Come on, McDuffie.
Well, I'll jump in. I know I'm always like the vocal one on here, but I think one of the things that we have to do, and what I have yet to see in a clear cut form, is that we have to define what is it exactly that we want. Like, we have conversations like this in our personal groups, and I've seen several Zooms and, been invited to several Zooms, but what is it that we're asking for? Because if we aren't organized enough to come up with exactly what we're asking for and what our goals are, then we're going to have a lot of conversation with no conclusion. And so I think it's important for us to define what is it that we want, and then how are we going to strategize and mobilize to get this done. Mm-hmm. And so once those goals are defined, I think you have to treat it like any other goal that you have in your life. Your SMART goals, that they're measurable. All of my HR people in here, I know y'all know your SMART goals, but I think that, we have to decide, like, what is it that we want and how do we want to get there? Like, what is the best way to get there? And then because I think we do have to have strategic voices in this hour, and I think that they don't just surface. Sometimes, we have to choose them, right? So I think that we have to decide who's going to speak on our behalf, and they have to be just as married to the cause as those of us that are deciding to get behind them and push the envelope are. Because sometimes you get leaders who they have a facade of being married to the cause, but then when they get in the position, they push their own agenda. Mm-hmm. And so I think we need authentic leaders who are genuinely concerned about what we're concerned about. But defining what we want, I think, needs to be at the top of our agenda, because we have a lot of different people saying a lot of different things. And my fear is, Pastor Stephen and Pastor Deneen, my fear is that we let this moment pass and we don't maximize this moment. And I think Matasha said it earlier, you know, we get excited when things happen and then the fire fizzles out. But I think it's up to us and it's incumbent upon us to keep this fire going. But in order to keep it going, we've got to continue to push it forward with an agenda in mind. And if we don't have a clear agenda, the cause itself is gonna get lost.
Yeah.
I think just to piggyback off of that also, I think we have to take the movement into a lifestyle. You know, it's this new, what did Larry call it? The new Black Lives Matter movement. Mm-hmm. It needs to be a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because when it's your life, you live, you eat, you sleep, you breathe it.
Absolutely.
It's with you when you go to bed. It's with you when you get up. It's who you become. And so we have to adapt that. We have to take these movements and make it a lifestyle.
And we definitely need an economic side to this that I don't think many people are talking about. Like, we have not hit them where it really hurts, which is economically.
Mm-hmm.
Lifestyle.
We're seeing, we're only seeing bits of that. You're seeing groups that are encouraging, encouraging African Americans to support Black-owned business, right? Listen, matter of fact, I'm gonna put a shout out right now for my homeboy, my brother from Chicago, Faith Moves. If y'all haven't heard of Faith Moves, y'all need to go to faithmoves.com and y'all need to support him. His name is Derek Ray. He's a bass player turned businessman from Chicago. We played together when I was playing, of course. And he plays bass for Justin Timberlake, but he is a businessman. And if y'all just pay attention on social media, you will see people with Faith Moves, rocking Faith Moves. I want to encourage y'all, please go to his website and support. He got so much merch on there and continuing to have new merch coming out. But you're seeing this sporadically, right? That there's this encouragement to support Black-owned business. But I want to put that out there even more. Listen, why not we support our sisters and brothers who are trying to make an impact, make a difference. You all may have heard, may not have heard, but in Louisville, Kentucky, about a month and a half ago, at a protest for Breonna Taylor, there was a local businessman, barbecue restaurant owner there in Louisville, Kentucky. Lost his life. They were leaving the protest. It was a peaceful protest. They were leaving. It was alleged that gunshots were fired and officers started shooting and shot this man who was a well-known businessman in the community who fed officers, regularly at his counter at his restaurant. And guess what? You don't even really hear much about it.
Not at all.
And it just happened that my friend that was with us a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Derek Hayes, he and I kind of talked about it. It's amazing how so many of these cases go just unheard of or just slide off, and it's up to us to keep them at the forefront, right? Forefront of the need to find justice and get justice for these innocent killings, what's happened to take place. So, but anyhow, back to that point, I think that it's important for us to encourage the support of Black-owned business. All right. Anybody else have anything else? I have one last question for y'all, and we can roll out. So, and I want to ask all of you all to respond to this. All of y'all can respond to this for me. In closing, what advice? I'll start with Lady D. Okay. In closing, what advice do you have for your African American female peers, young women and young men about the importance of voting in the upcoming elections and the potential impacts to addressing systemic racism?
It's quite simple. It's always important to be heard. And of course, we hear that vote because your vote matters. Vote because your voice, because you people fought for this to happen for you, and that is so true. But most importantly, and I'm really big about this word affirm and affirmation. And so if it doesn't do anything else, let it do something for you to vote. Because again, when it's all said and done, even if who you vote for doesn't win the election, the fact that you matter. And so I would just encourage everyone at the ages of 18 and above to vote, not because again of the political gesture, because again, who God has is going to be. But most importantly, vote because it's going to feed your spirit. It's going to feed who you are. And it's going to tell you that I have a seat at the table. I matter. I have a seat at the table. The table is spread and it's enough for everybody. But guess what? But there's a seat just for me at this table called voting.
Good. That's good. Natasha.
To take the easy way out and say I'll piggyback off of Lady D, but I'll piggyback off of Lady D.
Piggyback, girl.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly, especially the part of just playing a part and having a part and feeling like you have a say. Even like you say, if the person you voted for didn't win, it still makes you feel a part of the process. Makes you feel good about yourself. You know, some of you may be the first person in your families that have voted. You know, a lot of it is generational. And so you may be the first one to just step outside of that bubble and make some different choices for your family.
Good. Good. Milkia, what do you have to say?
Well, I want to give some context around this question. You know, in 1870, Congress passed the 15th Amendment, which stated that the right to vote, regardless of race or color or previous condition of servitude, would not be denied. However, in that time, they also instituted poll taxes. There were there was fraud and intimidation that still made it difficult for people to vote, if not impossible for them to fight. And that whole fight raged on for decades until 1965, when they passed the Voting Right Act. Today, we still see instances of voter suppression. We still see that intimidation happening at the polls. So I want you to recognize that we are still fighting. So it's important that in this election year that we make our voices heard. We exercise our right to vote because our voices matter. So I just implore everyone, please make sure that you go out and vote.
It's good. It's good. Elena?
I think, again, I'm going to just piggyback off of what Pastor Denis and Natasha said. And I think I just would say it in a different way, but I think so many of our young people still feel that, oh, my vote doesn't matter, you know. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, we are accountable. You know, several of the panelists have said this, that it's ultimately up to us to keep, you know, our stories and what's important to us in the forefront, and also that our voices matter. And kind of the simplest way I guess I can put it, and I heard this recently, is it's kind of an analogy, but what's important to the boss being our elected officials, tends to be what people care about and what happens. And so that's why it's important for us to get out and to vote and to make our voices heard.
We got to get the right boss in. Is all we got to do. So what I hear.
Amen. Amen.
What's important to the boss tends to be what's important to everybody else. So
yeah. Al, come on, talk to us. What do you?
So here's what I'd say. You know, in light of what just happened in Georgia with the primaries, with voter suppression, and of course with Stacey Abrams not necessarily losing, but you know what happened there as well. I think it's so imperative that not only do you get out, well, first of all, make sure you're registered, but make sure you get out to vote. And then understand that, you know, you really ask yourself, do you really have the right to complain if you didn't vote? Because a lot of times we want to point the finger, but we didn't take our civic responsibility seriously. And so I would definitely encourage, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what kind of games they try to play. I don't care what kind of switcheroo is going on, because a lot of that is happening everywhere. I got so many calls this past primary election from New York and other places where people were really being trying to be robbed of their voting voice. And so I encourage all of the young people, and not just young people, African Americans, and even some of the older people that don't take it seriously. No, your quote unquote choice may not be on the ballot, but here's what we have to remember. Not only is it important because it's a presidential election year, but think about your local elections. Those are the people that become your attorney generals. Those are the people that decide who's gonna get incarcerated, who's not. Those are the people that become your next mayors. Those are the people that become your chief of police. So you can't get upset if you don't take the time to exercise your voice and vote.
Y'all, because I've been wanting to talk about that. I think that there's not enough push for voting for those officials as it is for when it comes down to the presidential administration. And I think, kind of going back to Matasha's point, that we're excited for a little bit, and then it goes away, right? And I think that the same level of excitement and push that we have around this time for voting every 4 years, when we're voting for a president and other government officials, I think that needs to be just important a push. And I'll say from the African American community to vote for those local officials that make that impact on a local government level.
Absolutely, because they impact you directly.
Yes,
they directly impact you, and we have so many seats for Congress and Senate available. And let me say this, Pastor Stephen and Pastor Denise. A lot of times where we mess up too is that we'll go in the voting booth uneducated about who we're voting for. So that's the other piece of this, is that educate yourself on who's running. Because a lot of times you're thinking you're voting for your best interest because they're Democrat or because they're Republican or whatever, not realizing that their agenda doesn't even line up with your beliefs. And so if you don't educate yourself on what that person's agenda is, who they are, even their voting record, what do they stand for, you end up going into that ballot box and checking the name that sounds Black or the name that looks Black, and it's not necessarily in alignment with your core values. And I think that's where we miss the mark on so many occasions.
Yeah, I think that's good. That is excellent. Miss Murray, come on, Miss Janice Murray. Dr. Murray.
Yeah, Dr. Murray. I agree with what everyone has said, and especially Valerie's point about understanding what's happening locally. You know, I'm gonna put on a hazmat suit and crawl over broken glass to get to a voting booth. Okay, I'm gonna hang Purell off my head and everything else I need to do, because you know, there is so much at stake. There is so much going on where we can make a difference. And one of the reasons why we are where we are now is because people sat home 4 years ago. Or in 2016. People sat home. And so, you know, the Electoral College and all that stuff, we got to understand how that works. And to Valerie's point, to understand some of the local issues that are going on, and also recognize that there's a whole lot more than just that presidential election. There's a whole lot more. You know, the Senate and the Congress can be as powerful, and in some cases more powerful than the president can be. And so it's really kind of understanding, you know, who's on the Supreme Court, who's being appointed as life time judges. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter that's going to be impacted by the decisions that were made about who some of these judges are. Well, she's a grown woman.
Yeah.
And so, you know, those are the things that you know, that we really have to think about. And to Malkia's point, we're going to have to push because they are doing everything they can possibly do to take the vote away from us. And we just can't let it happen.
Oh, yeah.
So,
oh, yeah. Let me tell you, I think, and I hope I didn't cut you off. I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, okay, I'm good.
I think we need to be scheduling carpools to get folk to the voting polls because the mail vote by mail is being stripped. So how can we work together? How can we bring create strategies that will help us to be represented at the polls in every way possible? There's even, and I can't remember exactly, but there is even concession being made for if you were an offender to be able to vote. I can't remember exactly what it was, but
Florida, I think.
Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting to me about this is the very people that are trying to strip vote by mail, they vote by mail. They all vote by mail.
Exactly.
And some days I just have to shake my head because it's like, okay, it's good for you, but it's not good for anybody else. So, you know, we got to show up.
Which is why the need to really set in motion voting for your local government officials on an even higher plane, so that by the time we get to this place, right, those folk that and I, like you said, whether they're Democrat or whether they're Republican, it's not so much about their leaning as it is does their agenda align with yours?
Yes.
Because if you get those people in office, you will see more of what you're looking for to be represented.
But Valerie, Georgia showed out. I saw that on the news. Was it last week, the week before? It was during the virus, of course. Everything in the virus.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I was so proud.
And nobody wanted to take responsibility for everything that was going on. I mean, people were in line for like 4 hours, 8 hours. The good thing about it is that they did extend the polling time. And I saw in another state, I don't know what state this was in, where they actually closed the poll on voters who had not voted, who were standing outside waiting to vote. So Georgia was not that inequitable. However, I just think that we did a very poor job with this election, and nobody wants to take the blame for it.
Yeah, but I was really impressed with the turnout.
Because I think because what really got us is the last election with Stacey Abrams. You know, they did not come out to vote. You know, a lot of people were sitting at home twiddling their thumbs, and if you look at the culture and the climate of the culture today, everybody's tired of what we have as leadership or the lack thereof. And so people decided, you know, hey, and of course we, you know, I thank God for the Black Lives Matter movement, because everybody was screaming, vote, 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 vote. And I think people really see the seriousness of it. So I need for them to keep that same energy in November.
Dr. Murray, I'm with you. I'm grabbing me a hazmat suit. And if I got to crawl over broken glass, I'm gonna get there. And if I got to pull some folk right along with me, come on, y'all. Listen, we're gonna go through broken glass together. We're going to the boat.
I love it.
Yes. I'm proud that we had one of our recent high school grads that voted for the first time on yesterday, and I am just like, yes, this is great, because the message is being carried on now to the next generation. All right. Listen, I want to thank you all for your time. We are way over, but y'all had so much good stuff to say that it's almost hard to cut off the conversation because it's so meaty and so rich. But I want to stop and thank each of you,
Yes.
Miss Janice, Dr. Janice Murray.
That's right. And thank you for my promotion. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah.
Appreciate
I
that.
speak prophetically. I'm trying to
And
tell
I
you.
stand in
All right.
agreement.
That's right. Thank you.
That's it. And thank you to Ms. Valerie, Minister Valerie Somerville. Thank you to Miss Elena Adams, Miss Melkia McDuffie, and thank you to Miss Natasha LaQuinn, and none other than my queen, Pastor Deneen Goldsmith. So thankful for all of
These
you
are all of my faves.
for joining. Huh?
These are all my faves.
Your faves? She said y'all are all her faves. So we're thankful for having you all. Listen, if for those of you that are viewing, if you have any other questions or maybe some things that you would like for us to address, please don't hesitate to drop that in the comment section. We're going to do our best during this series. Our young adults are going to be coming towards the end of this month with another series to bring their voice to the conversation, and I'm really looking forward to that as we are getting ready to start a new sermon series, second Sunday in July, titled "My Shout Matters." My shout matters. So y'all don't want to miss that series. We're going to unpack that, and we're going to talk about the walls of Jericho and how those walls must come down.
Right.
And so I'm here to tell you that your shout matters. All right. So listen. If anybody want to find y'all got social media pages. Dr. Bird, you have social media page. Tell them where they can find you at.
Well, I'm on the old people's one. I'm on LinkedIn. That's the old people's social media. That's
y'all can find her. Y'all can find her on LinkedIn. I know a lot of people that still use LinkedIn. So listen, look up Ms. Janice Murray. You see her name is right here on the screen. You can check her out. Valerie Somerville, where can they check you out at?
Thank you.
Yeah, so you can follow me a couple of places on IG. You can follow The Circuit with Valerie, which is my talk show that we have our own IG page over there. And if my personal page, I kind of screen very closely, but it is _Lady Valerie D. And then on Facebook, Valerie Somerville. And also The Circuit with Valerie is on Facebook as well.
Awesome.
And the group page, The Circuit with Valerie.
Cool. Sounds
I'm
good.
glad I went before you. That's all I'm going to say. I'm glad I went before you.
Right? Seriously.
Elena?
I am on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but I don't really know my handles. I usually keep it simple, probably AEAJ 2002, something like that.
That is not simple, Elena. Sorry.
Y'all, Elena is a master educator. Y'all want to hear from her. Trust me.
She said, I keep it simple.
That's probably not even correct. So
that is not simple. Sorry.
Don't go to sleep. She is a silent storm. She is a silent storm when it comes down to education.
Yes, she is.
She will rock your world. I trust you. Trust me. Melkia, tell them where they can find you at.
I'll say LinkedIn is still very professionally relevant, so you can find Melkia McDuffie on LinkedIn.
Natasha.
LinkedIn as well, Natasha LaQuinn. Facebook, Natasha LaQuinn. Instagram at She Is Real Estate.
It is.
Okay. And me, Facebook, Twitter, IG, LinkedIn.
Since when?
None. I was zero.
There's nothing.
I was just repeating what I heard.
Right. You can find her at Pastor Stephen Goldsmith.
No, honestly though, for real, coming soon. Social media. I don't know where I'm going to start.
Yep.
But in the meantime, just find me in the clouds.
That you're in the glory.
Or no, you start lurking on PG's page, watching all of us. Lady Dill said, "I heard you did such and such."
Yes, I checked on my face. I do.
Well, I want to say thank you all once again. For those of you all tuning in, thank you for tuning into this conversation. I hope that it was a blessing to you. It was eye-opening, informative. Until next week, we will see y'all later. Till then, we got to go. Peace.
Good night, ladies.
Good night. God bless.
Bye.